This conference will now be recorded.
I'll be chairing the webinar today, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone that has joined us today. In the last webinar we're hosting for 2020, we'll begin these conversations again in 2021. Our webinar today is titled, Virtual Conferences Are Better Than Physical Ones? Yes, No, or Maybe. This webinar is an attempt on the side of the AEN to reflect in terms of the event that we hosted on the 23rd to 25th of September 2020, because it gives us a better sense in terms of planning for the next event, how people experienced the event and how it went, and what are the things that we need to improve or keep or make better. So it's important to us to get feedback of our members and also people working in the sector, the EADM sector. So that is really important for us. So in our reflections, we would like to take time to reflect on the outcomes, the successes of Evidence 2020 online as an event that we host biannually. But this year, because of COVID-19, it was different. We had to, when in March, the regulations around COVID in South Africa or most parts of the world were announced. In April, we had to immediately re-strategize this event into a fully virtual event, which has a really learning curve for the AEN and a great experience at the same time. But it will be great to hear feedback from the attendees in terms of how they've experienced this. How we've structured the webinar today, we have 3 questions, broad questions that we are going to ask, and we want our participants to engage with us this time. So we don't have speakers, it's not a panel discussion, it's us as participants giving our feedback in terms of the 3 questions that we are going to pose during this webinar. Then before we begin with the webinar, let's just go through a few rules of engagement so that we make sure that things are more easier for us to navigate through this event, and also give each other an opportunity to participate and be heard. So I think just to keep this technical process as very simple, we are not going to use our webcams for this session because it makes things easier, because people are using their data or connectivity in different parts of the continent and beyond. Sometimes it might make things difficult for them. We are going to mute all the mics for all the participants, and then please unmute yourself when you have to contribute or ask a question. That will really be helpful to make sure that we manage the background noise during the session, because we want everyone to be able to hear the discussions and be able to participate in the discussions. Please, if you have questions or contribution, please submit them on the chat as well, so that we can use that platform to also advance the discussions throughout this webinar. And also there will be an opportunity for questions. We'll collect questions towards the end of the webinar if you have questions or any more comments for during the session. And also, because I'm projecting my slide, I won't be able to see who's raising their hand or unmuting yourself. Please, if you unmute yourself to comment, please share your name and then give your input. That will really be great, so that we know who's talking, and that will really be helpful. And then this session will be recorded, and we'll share the recording with the participants at the end of the webinar, and also the slides. So in case you have any technical problems, please be in touch with Precious, who is our technical support during the event. I think just to briefly take you through this series of webinars are hosted by Africa Evidence Network, which is a pan-African community that is really interested in contributing to the end of poverty and inequality in the continent. And our mission is to make sure that we contribute really in evidence-informed decision-making in the continent. And within the AEN, we have 4 ways of working. One of them is to make sure that we inform. One of the ways that we do that is through our newsletter, and also the series of these webinars and other mechanisms that are in place to make sure that we inform our members within the EIDM. And the second way is to connect. One of our mechanisms is Evidence 2020, or the Evidence Conference series that we host on a biannual basis. And also the third way of working is for us to learn from one another, using the landscape maps, using other different mechanisms in working. And the last way of working is advocacy. So we mostly advocate through our Africa Leadership Award, which is an award that we use to sort of showcase the great work that is done through the continent by different individuals that are contributing into the ecosystem and other ways, and we partner with different organizations to make sure that the work is moving forward in the continent. Please get in touch with us. Those are our contact details. It will really be great to hear from you as the AEN. I think just to, at least we have all those rules of engagement to make things easier for us to navigate the webinar. So the first topic that we want to talk about is to hear your experience in participating in virtual working meeting. How did Evidence 2020 online as a virtual working meeting work for you or not work for you? Because that will really be helpful to us to get your input and you share your experiences with us. That will really be helpful to us. So I'll open the floor to the participants to share their experiences in relation to the event we hosted in September. Please, if you are going to contribute, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then share your inputs. Thank you very much. Who's going to start us off? Any takers for this particular questions to kick the conversation off?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you. Please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aziza, part-time staff member at ACE, and my very first experience of the evidence series, and it happened to be the one online. What I appreciated the most about it being virtual was the fact that I didn't have to be struggling with traffic or, getting there on time or whatever. It was comfortable. I was able to attend all the meetings that I wanted to. And yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that I didn't have to struggle with finding the perfect space. All the spaces were perfect because they were virtual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aziza, for your input. Is there anyone else who would like to contribute to this particular question? What was your experience?
Sure, Cece, I'd love to jump in. I am Jennifer Parakumi. I was working on workstream 1 with Likwa, and my experience, I think overall was good. There were a few challenges, I would say, technical challenges early on the first day and a half around the platforms, and a little bit of confusion from the facilitator end of things around who would be in what meeting at what time, because the main platform, people were redirected into a Zoom, redirected into, there were just so many platforms at play. And I think we could have probably been a little bit prepared ahead of time how to manage the different platforms or get support to the different platforms. But eventually, I think everything worked out. But I do somehow think that there was some engagement that we missed, because there was a meeting that I think I was with Beryl will correct me if I'm wrong, but we had like 3 people in the meeting. Meanwhile, there were like lots of other people in another platform contributing to the discussion, and we weren't aware that they were there. So that was like a little bit unfortunate, but overall, I think it worked out, and the outputs were fantastic.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your contribution. That was really insightful, because when you do something for the first time, yes, challenges will be experienced. So I think it's really important for us to get this feedback and be able to see how do we position ourselves and next time to make sure that all our systems or platforms are seamless going forward. Anyone else would like to contribute to this question? Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and share your inputs with us. I think,
Hi.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Likwa, Program Officer for Workstream 1. I was with Jennifer, the lady that just spoke. Yeah, so for me, I would say the virtual conference, it did work very well for me in the sense that I received the whole sort of, virtual thing as an opportunity for sort of, capacity building, to build that skill, of interacting virtually. It's something that I'm quite sure will be a skill in demand, in the future. So, moving from having to follow the program, something that I have on a document, knowing when to, which room to go to next and all of that. For me, I received it as a learning experience, and so I really enjoyed it. And the obstacles that I met along the way, fair enough, there were others that were technical, but the others that were not, for me, I'm talking about if stuff was, if the problem was technical, then I didn't solve it. The technical team would solve it. But for other things, I would maneuver my way, around the platform in order to get where I want to, and I thought the other people also doing the same thing. And I read that as a way of learning, as a way of acquiring a new skill, a skill that will be in demand going forward, especially in this field or in any field, where conferences are hosted. So I really loved the virtual working meeting. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Likwa, for your inputs. Please, participants, don't forget to also use the chat if you want to contribute towards this discussion. I think in terms of like wrapping up this question, I think it would be interesting to know which parts of the meeting did you find most interesting? Was it easier to engage with other participants? Because I think that's something that is really important, because as the AEN, we try to make sure that our events are really engaging. You are able to network with other people within the field, and you are able to engage with different people that you might not have seen in a long time. Did this give you that opportunity at least? It will be great to hear. Yes, please share. Introduce yourself and your input.
Cecilia, this is Beryl. I actually just want, I took too long to try to find the raise my hand thing. I just want to share a few things from the previous discussion before we move on, if that's possible.
That's okay, Beryl. Please go ahead.
Okay, so one, I think that there was tremendous amount of learning by doing, especially around how to navigate and getting the tech team, the platform IT people to make changes on the fly that really improved the experience, by day 3, like signposting things and unburying ways to participate. Jen's story from the first day is absolutely true. But and how to capture that to make sure that at least that's a starting point for how to set up the platform next time. But other things that struck me as either wonderful, but I didn't know about them in time, that can go into maybe FAQs for session or work stream facilitators, but also FAQs that participants can quickly access when they come online and they have questions they just kind of want to, instead of poking around. So for the workstream leads or session leads, it would be great to have a packet at the start to know about things like the value of pre-recording videos to contribute to a session. And I found that when I was in sessions where they had them, that was very useful, but it wasn't anything I thought of on my own. And of course, once we were in the conference, it was a bit late to do them. That I think that participation, this is kind of an IT, but also maybe could be in another question, but if IT could load the other session videos as quickly as possible, so that if you miss a session, it's no more than the end of the day that you can, go back and get caught up and make your decisions about where you want to go or what's happening or bringing it into your work in another work stream. And to not load the videos until long after the conference ended, I felt was a big loss. It kept us siloed in a way. So while I love the platform and the experience, I felt that that's an issue that we might want to explore was how much were we really able to overcome siloing, which was one of the objectives when we first brainstormed doing this conference differently, whether in person or online. This was a key barrier that we were trying to address. So those were my thoughts for techie type stuff.
Thank you very much, Beryl. I think that's really helpful to give participants a full experience, especially if you didn't have an opportunity to attend at the beginning of a particular day, so you can be able to catch up and follow the following day when you are joining the event. Thank you so much for that input. Anyone else who would like to share before we move to the next question? In the absence of contributions now, I think there'll always be an opportunity from our side to make sure that we reflect and get inputs around these evidence events that we do. I think for topic 2 or question 2 that we want to chat about is to distinguish whether AEN should continue with a virtual working event or a traditional scientific meeting. What are then the pros and cons of a working meeting with a focused work streams and targeted outputs versus a traditional scientific meeting with abstracts, posters, and presentations? I think that will really be helpful to hear your inputs in relation to this particular question.
Suziwe, this is Beryl. Since I'm one of the old timers who was there at the birth, I'm kind of shocked to read that Evidence 2020 was ever considered a traditional scientific meeting. I would disagree with that. That essentially, I think you had people possibly, maybe weighted toward academics where the experience was more working in a certain way. But the discussions from the very beginning were how to bring in all of the participatory, sort of non-traditional, how do we want to work differently type of thinking to setting the agenda. And so, one of the things that I would caution about the discussion is that it doesn't do AEN justice if we set up a series of binaries that either Evidence 2020 was A, or it was, totally, or it was B totally. Because it doesn't bring into the mix the richness of how at every conference from 2014 onwards we were trying to say how do we do better How do we get more voices? How do we open up the discussions? How do we challenge what has gone before and the power hierarchies and problems inherent with just using things, the way it's always been done. So we never wanted to be a traditional scientific meeting. And I do think that there was a time when there was a consultant brought in for 2016 or 2018 that thought, oh no, the way to get more participation is to actually do that. And it didn't work well. So, I think part of what could be helpful is if this discussion does include what we have learned before and takes the discussion forward in terms of this was the latest thing we were trying to do. So it's not about going back to something because there's nothing to go back to. And COVID has taught us that we don't want to go back to the way things were. And we don't want binary choices. COVID is teaching us that things are complex and that there are ways to build back better. And so the question that I have is for AEN, how does AEN want to build back better, having had an experience online, but what worked and what didn't? Did networking break down power structures? Were young people able to access more experienced people and talk to them and interact with them more easily than we've experienced at conferences? Again, another objective for this conference, whether we were going to be in Uganda or, ended up online. So I'm sorry I'm jumping in with it, but I don't think binary discussions ever get us where we want to go, and because we lose actually the meat of the matter, which is what happens in between and what are the mixes of things. So that's my reaction to the questions, not so much an answer to them.
Thank you very much, Beryl. I think we want to always make sure that we are innovative in the way we do things and also learn from what we've done before. So that is why I think we've put together a series of reflection meeting with different stakeholders at different levels, so that we make sure that we have these discussions and understand what have we learned, how do we move forward to make sure that we make a very impactful and lasting impact in terms of the work that we want to do and the contribution that we want to do in the space that we are in. So I think that is really also helpful from your side to look at it in that particular way. Thank you so much for your contribution. Is there anyone else who would like to share their inputs with us?
Sure, Suziwe, let me jump in on this one. I'm not sure if it relates to this question, but I have to appreciate the fact that I think AEN intentionally didn't use titles for the doctors and professors in the room, and I think that actually worked really well in favor of creating greater access and access to those more senior in the academic space and be able to share openly and receive new ideas and be able to move the discussion forward. So if that was an intentional decision, I think it worked really well. And sorry that doesn't actually answer your question, but I think it's worthwhile to note.
Thank you, Jennifer. I hear someone has unmuted herself or himself.
Suziwe, Karina.
Yes, Karina.
Probably, listening to Beryl, and I think I probably agree with Beryl in terms, I think that all of the evidence events have been very different from kind of the typical academic events that I've attended over the years. And I think for me, the driving force in creating an event is what is the purpose that you want to achieve. And I think going into Evidence 2020 and then having to move online, I mean, before we were moving online, our whole idea was we wanted to really progress in particular 3 areas around evidence use in Africa. and you know, the setting up of the working groups, and then the work streams was really about that. And I think for me, that purpose of wanting to progress meant we had to engage as much as possible. You know, we had to create spaces where we can engage one another. And I think for me, that was probably one of the nicest things at Evidence 2020 was the manner in which I could connect with people that I knew very little about before. And I mention that specifically because I know a lot of people typically say, oh, but online events, you can only really socialize with those you've met before. You know, you already have connections. But for me, that was one of the nice things of Evidence 2020 is that I actually made connections in it. I don't think it was just the structure of the program in terms of working sessions where it was a core group of people that would go back, you know, 2-3 times a day and meet with one another, and you get a sense of who people are. But also I think the social engagements and the opportunities that the platform creates, I really enjoyed that. So I do think if we go forward, for me, the driving thing then is what's the purpose? In that regard, I think our events will always be very different from an academic or scientific meeting where it's just about making known results of studies. I think being a community that crosses, you know, role players from academics to practitioners and knowledge translators and policymakers, we're really informed by very different motivations for what kind of things we want to achieve when we get together, whether physical or in an online space.
Thank you very much, Karina, for your input. I think it was really great that we also, as you spoke about the working group members, working groups that were established so that before the event, there was a lot of work that was done in the background to make sure that this working meeting is a success. So I think it's really amazing in the way in which we do things differently at a different, for different events to make sure that we advance EIDM in Africa. Thank you very much for your input. Anyone else would like to share their input?
Suziwe, there's a question on the chat from Beryl. It reads, is there a slide of conference objectives that can be shared?
Thank you, Likwa. We did not include the objectives on this set of slides, but it's something that we can enhance the slides and share when we share the slides to all the participants and also the recording of this webinar. Thank you, Likwa. Any other contributions for the
Hello everyone, today can you hear me? This is Nainu from eBay.
Please go ahead.
Hello. All right. I'd like to share my own experience. It was a great opportunity to network with people online. This was one of its kind. That gave the opportunity to network with people whom I couldn't meet offline, meeting with so many people. Actually, comparing with normal meetings or meetings that happen physically, this one has its pros and it also has its cons. For example, meeting online is cheaper than meeting offline. This is because those who usually get challenges getting visas to travel or travel expenses, this was all violated because we just needed internet and access to the platform. I personally enjoyed the conference, especially with the different sessions where we had to just move to different sessions and get a lot of info and network with people. It was such a great experience. And also, if you look at the virtual presentation, meeting people offline physically is always a great opportunity. The feeling can never be replaced by that of online meeting. But then, as we try to cope, because putting up posters on the wall and having people come meet physically like that, and you explain, it's a different kind of feeling. Here we only got to get the virtual halls, the virtual salons, virtual kind of feeling, but it still works. So the sessions I actually enjoyed most during the African Evidence Network 2020 was the networking sessions. Most of the networking sessions that happen in Zoom, except for the ones that we had to key in, the ones on I don't remember very well, but there were some few ones which we had to key to enter the room. But this was very challenging for me, as I had to key for a very long time, not knowing when I will be given access to the room. So this was very challenging, and I actually missed such sessions which I was very interested in. Even with the coming of Ella, using the same platform, there was a lot of improvement. There was a lot of lessons to learn. It was a great opportunity. All in all, virtual is good, but physical is always better because you get to meet people physically. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. That's really great. Thank you so much. Any inputs from any of the other delegates? Okay, I think, is there anyone? Yes.
Sorry, it's Karina. I was wondering specifically if I could ask people to comment a little bit about the idea of a working event. So we've commented quite a bit, and I think what we've heard, there's quite a bit on the online component, but I'm wondering how people felt about the part of the event that was way more a working event. That wasn't much, there wasn't as much of, I can bring whatever and share whatever. I really came and had to contribute on very particular things and questions or issues that were agreed beforehand. And I'm just wondering to what extent that was something useful or not useful for people, because I think that for me would be an interesting question going forward, how we think of working events.
Susie, I have two thoughts on that.
Yes, please go ahead.
It's really just to link what Karina is saying in two ways, and that is that, and I think it's a great question, and it goes to the heart of really what was driving the conference design, whether it was in person or online. But my questions are this: as the approach to working, there's the overall question, does a working conference make more sense than just to get together and present information, share information, that sort of type of event, however you want to construct it? I think that's a great overarching question. But underneath those, I would like to say, to what extent does a working conference that has work streams address siloing in EIDM? And another question that I put up, so I put up 4 questions in the chat that I think that I also want to know as a participant, what happens to those outputs? And this was brought up during the conference, but I haven't seen anything since then. That, we have decades of asking the question of our conference declarations worth anything. But these were, so we had a working conference, we had working outputs. Now what? And who owns them? And how do you take it forward so that the good work that was done, builds to something? So where is the ownership and where is the responsibility and accountability to the participants who contributed to the work? Going forward. So before we jump to what kind of conference do we want in 2022, I would really like the reflection to be able to think about a working conference and tackling siloing, which is a major problem in the EIDM sector that needs to be addressed. And AEN has a role to play in that, and conference is simply one activity that can contribute to addressing siloing. and then ownership and next steps with the outputs from an example of a working conference. So again, back to Corinna's excellent overarching question. I don't mean to preempt that. I want to add to it.
Thank you very much, Beryl and Karina, about that. And I think it will be great to hear from the participants in terms of what are your thoughts around these questions that have just been posed. Please share your thoughts with us. You can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and share your thoughts. I'm not getting any takers for this one. I think in terms of the outputs that were developed throughout the conference, I think the next step that we have taken is to pull all the information that was received through the conference, because before the event, the working group members worked on all the work that was brought into the event. And during the 3 days, we received a lot of inputs. So all of those inputs are being collated to make sure that we pull them together. And then the working groups will be reconvened to plan what are the next steps for each and every work stream, and how do we move the great work that was done from those work streams forward. So the communication will go out as soon as all of that has been done, but it's going to continue. The people that were involved will still continue to be involved to make sure that those are advanced, because during the event, I think we received a lot of inputs in terms of all the outputs that were taken out or were shared during the event. So in terms of that, we are working on that. That's working progress, and all the involved people will continue to be involved. So any takers in terms of the question that was shared with us earlier, please share your inputs, and also share your experiences, because I see most people that I see on my list now as people that really attended the event as well. It would be great to hear from you, people that were in the working groups, people that really contributed to the event. It would be really good to hear your inputs, your experiences, and also how this event, how you experienced a fully virtual event from your end. Okay, I'm not getting any feedback or contribution in terms of this one. So I think it's really going to be helpful for us to make sure that we get these reflections from different individuals, because it really will help us, because getting these inputs will also assist us in the planning of Evidence 2022, because that's something that we're looking forward to. We want to make sure that we plan earlier to make sure that we have a successful event at that point. So it will really be interesting to get feedback from different individuals. So I don't know if I can maybe get feedback maybe from the POs as well, that worked very hard around this event. So we've heard from Liqua. Maybe we can hear from Charity, who was leading the capacities workstream. What are your inputs or experiences that you've had during the event?
Okay, thank you so much, Siziwe. In terms of the event, what I really liked was the fact that it was a working meeting, so that actually gave people an opportunity to participate, and it wasn't just like people are giving presentations, but people actually actively participated, and there was a lot of learning going on. So if I think about my work stream, on capacity development. I think there was a lot of capacities that were developed actually because of this doing the event in this way, because people actually got to give their input about what they are doing in their organizations. So we had an opportunity to learn about different ways of developing capacities in the different EIDM organizations. So this was really a learning event, and I think we should do more of that because it allows people to give their contributions, and information just doesn't come from one person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charity, for your input. Maybe I should ask Precious as well. It would be great to get your reflections.
Thank you, Sidiwe. Hi, everyone. What I enjoyed about this conference was very focused. You know, we had 3 work streams, and we had goals that we wanted to achieve, and mine was we were working on developing a paper on building collaborations, and also, you know, how can we have you know, communities of practice within the AEN, and even, you know, collaborate with other organizations who already have a community of practice within their networks. And so for me, I found it that this conference was more engaging, and people, you know, gave people the opportunity to contribute to the work that was started. And also there was more interest, you know, of wanting to know, you know, I mean, just interest to participate until the, you know, the final, for example, the final document that we developing for collaborations, and also seeing a lot of networking happening within, you know, during the virtual conference. So for me, I really enjoyed and seeing people actually, you know, writing on a document. You know, we had a Google document, and we asked people to contribute, and just people writing their experiences, and so also giving us an opportunity to follow up and get more information from them. So yeah, I really enjoyed, and I love seeing the participation from all the participants that attended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Precious, for that contribution. I think it will really be great to also hear from my colleague Nazreen on her experience and in terms of this discussion.
Thank you, Siziwe, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining today and keeping these conversations alive and going. We've had a lot of reflections internally at ACE and AEN about our experiences developing and pulling off the conference. So I feel like I don't want to say too much, because this really is for the members to be able to reflect with us and share their experiences without knowing all the background scenes that went on. But from being a participant as well, I loved the idea of a working meeting, to be honest. And I think Beryl has asked us some very important questions in the chat as well about how designing a meeting like this helps to achieve some of our objectives, but outspoken objectives, but also some of our hidden objectives. And this goes to things like voice and everyone having an opportunity to contribute, and whether in many ways virtual platforms either help with that or whether they hinder with that. And I think it would be helpful to hear from all of you whether you felt you were able to use a virtual platform to be able to contribute. I think these are important questions. I think the question on the differences between conferences is really about the value of a working meeting versus what most members are quite used to with respect to scientific conferences. But also, I think in terms of some of our previous conferences have had some elements of traditional conferences, like submitting abstracts, presentations, posters, even though we've been innovative about how we do posters and poster pods. And that led to a little bit of clarification and confusion. Earlier on, we had lots and lots of members asking questions. How do I submit my abstract? How do these get chosen? And that's partly because of experience with some of our previous conferences. So it's nice to kind of engage in this kind of conversation that, you know, there were a few things that even in terms of our innovations as AEN over the years, so there was some elements that we dropped completely for this, for Evidence 2020. And it would be great to hear from those of you that are more quiet. And then this is the difficulty of virtual webinars, but also virtual conferences, is just to feel comfortable enough to share whether, you know, working on these working meetings and working with one particular work stream for the entire conference was helpful, as Elton was saying, in terms of deep diving into certain topics that maybe you haven't had the chance to spend so much time with and in a collaborative way, and whether that was helpful, but also whether you would have liked to be part of all the work streams and weren't able to, and how we can think about these kind of dilemmas and structures for the next time we think about, or when we think about Evidence 2022, is how do we make this more and more inclusive and more useful for our members? And I think that's really the point of today's webinar, is to hear from you about your experience, but also your ideas. So I hope that's what you were looking for, Siziwe, from me, but I'd really love to hear from our members more.
Thank you very much, Nazreen. I thought it would be good just to break the silence a bit and go to the team and get their reflections. But I think those that have not gotten an opportunity to reflect, I think there's still an opportunity for you to reflect with us. Please share your reflections with us. Thank you. If you would like to contribute, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and share your inputs with us. Okay. I think also, I don't know, I saw someone's microphone was on. Please go ahead if I spoke over you.
Hi, Siziwe. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm one of that sort of way of seeing the difference between, say, working conference with targeted targeted sort of outputs as compared to the traditional scientific way of doing conferences, is the work that has to be done before leading up to the conference itself. So, you know, I would want to believe that in the traditional sense of conferences, you know, what is presented on the 3 days is somewhat a sort of a polished or semi-polished product. When you send in your abstract, you're sending in something that you've worked on. You know, you've found your conclusions, or you know, you want to share with people stuff that you've already worked on. Whereas in our case, we did have intended sort of targets to say we're targeting this, but we did not have things readily sort of worked on. We were sort of wanting to take advantage on the fact of bringing everyone, you know, to contribute to the product. So I see that difference is very important. Whereas in the traditional sense, the product is you present, you come on the day of the conference with the final product. For us, we arrive at the final product together with everyone who's attending the conference. So I thought that it actually says a lot, especially when it comes to the issue of co-production and co-ownership of the product. You know, people in the 3 days were not just sort of passive consumers. They were sort of active. They contributed to whatever we have, and whatever we have currently is something that is still not sort of at the stage of sort of end product. It still needs, you know, further sort of reworking, further input from other people. So for that reason, I think it also sustains the conversation and also the interest on the discussion that we had. So I can see a continuation there, and for me, that serves as a great merit if you compare it to traditional conferences. Because on the traditional conferences, on the day you might want to believe that on the day when we finish, people are done. I've presented my paper, I've shared my findings with everyone who was there, so it's done. But for what we had, it's not yet done. You know, people contributed, but there's still a conversation to be sustained, you know, going forward and taking whatever we have to a better sort of, I mean, state, namely maybe through publications, as my colleague Precious suggested, that one of the output, you know, in their work stream was to have a paper on that. So yeah, I think they are good. There are many advantages that one can cite, you know, for how we conducted our conferences compared to the traditional. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Likwa, for your contribution. I think on the list of participants, I see people that participated in the event, you know, from different perspectives, facilitators, note takers, you know, organizations that partnered with us. So it was really great to get, you know, different experiences and inputs from those different perspectives, because that will really be helpful for us in advancing the planning of 2022 and also making sure that what we do gets better and better, and it contributes to the EADM field.
Can I talk, Siziwe?
Yes, please go on.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pungwa Nyamukachi. I wanted to congratulate you, Siziwe and Precious, for pulling off a very very comprehensive event. What I appreciated really was the pre-engagements, especially, and Precious, I must commend you for guiding our collaborations workstream group very well. Thank you for that. So I, from a personal perspective, I really enjoyed being a part of this, and I think the mark of the conference to me was big, considering that it was virtual. So I commend you for everything that you have done. But given that it is a virtual modality, I think it does come with its challenge of you know, you can't replicate, I guess, you know, what real life interactions can give. But I think you guys really try to pull off a big event in that way. But I think the virtual modality has its limitations, and I think if we ever do, and God forbid there's still COVID-19 in 2022, but I think going forward, it may be just something to consider, how you can streamline and maybe just simplify an online delivery, if it's the amount of work streams or the amount of breakaways, and just keep it tight and narrow. But thank you so much. I learned a lot. I enjoyed just contributing to my work stream, and I learned a lot from everybody else. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Fungwa, for your inputs. Is there anyone else who would like to share?
Hi, Siziwe. Hi.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric, and I want to really So I was saying I want to comment and say thank you to those who took the lead in the different work streams. I was one of those who was part of work stream. Sorry, I keep muting myself. I don't know what's happening. I was a member of work stream 1, and from the beginning I underestimated, how much investment I needed to have put in terms of, dedicating time to that work stream. And at certain point, I found myself, in between Cameroon, where the internet facility was very poor, and now find myself in the UK, which is a little better. And so I found it really, really, really hard to make the contributions I had to really make, given the difficulties with internet connection. So that's one of the things I really found a little challenging. It's interesting to have this virtual conversation and the virtual planning, but given the different specificities and with respect to the context, that contribution which you would expect people to make at some point and that engagement really breaks at some point because of the absence of the basic facilities to actually effectively contribute. And so I found it a little frustrating at some point. I know it's a problem which is specific to my country, I must say, Cameroon. But I wish to commend Likwa, who was leading our working group, who was able to find a balance when there was these gaps, and to be able to get the working group fully contribute to what we had at the end of the day as an exceptional virtual conference for 2020. Thank you all very much again.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your contribution. I'd seen Patrick's mic was on at the same time as Eric, so I don't know if you want to go next.
Yes, please, Cizewe, thank you. I think I should also start by commending the work that you guys did to pull this conference off. I think amongst the different conferences I've attended, this was really neat and quite innovative, and I had to make some recommendations for the conference organizers that they could learn from this. And I think lots of people also echoed the same thing. So I think that was great work. I would say there were certain innovations that came up in this conference that were quite good, and which we had actually learned and actually used in other conferences where they didn't even ask us to do, like doing your presentations by video and sending them beforehand, and then just standing by for questions. I think this greatly reduced internet hitches and actually made the presentations more interesting, because you could actually bring in participants of the project in the forms of audio visuals, and then it made the presentation surprisingly more interesting. And I think it's something I would say going forward, even at conferences when I have to be there face to face, I'll probably think of doing some presentations in that manner. And then I also think that the physical touch, the physical touch that comes in face to face, the human touch, cannot be downplayed. I mean, there's no way I think I would ever prefer a virtual conference over a physical one. But there is no doubt that there would be so many things that would make it impossible for us to always have physical conferences. Sometimes it may not even be disease. It may be challenges with travels due to visa restrictions. It could be financial restrictions. It could even be that you are too busy, and then there may be a need for some kind of virtual presentations. And I think we can build on what we have learned so far, and ensure that in cases where we have the conferences, we can make it bigger for people to be able to present virtually if they cannot be present, or people to be able to follow the conferences virtually if they cannot be present. And I think there was a way that was used for this conference to engage people to want to attend, to want to contribute, and things like that. And this can be replicated as we move forward. Then finally, I think for the work streams, at eBase, we have quite a lot of young people with a lot of energy, and they could help with work streams in the future if need be, and doing certain tasks. We've had these discussions in-house. Lots of them have been interested in how can we be involved in helping to make sure that the conference is more successful one way or the other. So I think it would just be if there are tasks that need to be assigned. If you give us a shout out at eBase, we will be ready to chip in how much we can. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for your contribution and also your support throughout the event as an organization and your team. Any other contributions from anyone? Please share your contributions. We are almost at the end of the webinar, so I think it would be great to also get from different perspectives. If you were a note taker, if you were a facilitator, and maybe if you were the events coordinator or partnered with us, it would be really great to get your reflections of the event. Okay, Liqua, from the chat, are there any inputs from there that you can share with the group?
No specific questions, but just comments.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. If there's no inputs from that end, so I don't know if there's anyone else who would like to contribute anything to this discussion, so that we can be able to begin to wrap up the event. I see Peter's mic is on. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Suziwe and everybody. I've been really listening with interest to this discussion. Obviously, I've got a different hat on as part of the technical team that assisted with the production and taking the lead. And I just want to congratulate everybody that worked on this conference, that constructed the program, that designed the objectives, the program construct, the delivery of the event, which is really a fresh approach. And finding that blend between the live in person and then doing the transition and the transformation to an innovative working online conference. You are certainly leaders in this industry and set new benchmarks for going forward. So I really want to encourage you to keep your open minds as to what can be done. One thing that dawned out of this discussion, and I took a lot of learning from the feedback that you've, as a collaborative, given in this session, and to learn from that and to apply it from a technical aspect to give advice on what can be done and what can be done better. And for example, what Beryl mentioned earlier about the immediate release of the videos, our original thoughts were that first we have to polish those videos and round the edges of the start and the finishing. And when all the videos have been properly polished, we will only put it onto the system at that point. But now realizing the value that even though we've got raw footage and having that published immediately, how that could contribute to the discussions of the next day. So it's really valuable to hear all these insights and work through the pros and cons of all of those activities, and then put structures in place to enable us to enact and do what you need to happen at the event. The one thing that I've really stood out was a comment made by one of the last speakers about the blended approach, and that once we are, and we may very well in 2022 be able to go back to an in-person event, but probably never dropping the online component and then combining it into a hybrid or a blended conference. And is it really necessary ever for a presenter to stand at a lectern being put under the pressure of doing a live presentation? Why can't those presentations be pre-recorded and having the presenter in the room to deal with the live components, the live feedback, and then patching the rest of the world into that room as well? So there really is a million nuggets coming out of these discussions that are relevant for the future of coming together. Ruth always said, and I want to close with that remark, what can we do as a collective that cannot be done by an individual? And I think that is a driving of all the different components in the design of this event. So just again, congratulations to everybody that have worked on this, and thank you so much to everybody that participated and contributed. Thank you, Suziwe. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your reflections. It was really great to get inputs from your perspective as an event organizer or being on the technical side of the event. That was really helpful. Are there any inputs? Because I think there'll always be a lot of questions that we want answered in relation to how do we do this better? How do we become innovative? How do we become flexible in organizing events like this? So that's something that always, is there someone who would like to share?
Yes, Siziwe, Patrick here again.
Yes.
I was just talking back on message with my team back in the office in Yaoundé, and they were, Andrea and Rigobert were talking about the engagement of the French community, the Francophone community in the next conference, and that because I think Andrea and Rigobert have a strong position that they could engage the French, at least 3 French-speaking countries in Central Africa, and this can spill out to other French-speaking countries. However, they mentioned that they would love to be more involved way ahead of the conference to know exactly what's going on, to know if there's actually space for French-speaking participants, and how can something be designed in a way that they could really gain from this. Now, from our experience, the French-speaking community in Africa it's actually not abreast or not up to speed with the English-speaking part. I think it's not only in Africa, but generally globally, and it could be an advantage if they were involved, or if they could get involved. This was the feedback I was getting from them by message, because they're having difficulties actually contributing due to network issues in Yaoundé. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that. I think that's something that has always been, in the radar of the AEN, to say how do we best, accommodate other languages, the different diversities and different issues. So I think that's something still needs to be discussed a bit further to make sure that we are inclusive in our approach in terms of the work that we do. I think we are close to at the end of the event. I think there will always be questions that we're going to ask in terms of the lessons that we've learned. How can we improve this event to make sure that it's really of benefit and it impacts the sector that we are in? So I think there will be ongoing conversations from the AEN side to get different stakeholders to reflect with us, and from those reflections, use some of the the inputs and recommendations that we got there into planning, and make sure that even in that planning we'll continue to engage our stakeholders, because it's important to us to make sure that we engage our stakeholders and to make sure that they shape what goes out or the type of event we plan for going forward for the sector. So I'm really grateful for everyone that has contributed to this webinar. I know it's been difficult to sort of engage robustly, but there'll always be, we'll make opportunities to continue these discussions to make sure that we get inputs and reflections from different individuals at different, what their experiences were and how to make sure that we get better at what we are doing. So at this moment, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for really, participating in this webinar. And I know some of the questions have not really been answered, but the conversation still continue. If you want to be an AEN member, you're not yet, please join us and continue these conversations with us, because we really still want to have you chatting with us, engage with us in all our social media platforms as well. We're there, the conversation is continuing on those platforms as well. We're using different mechanisms to really continue this work. And at this point, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who participated before the event, during the event, after the event, and particularly on an ongoing basis of building EIDM in the continent. So thank you very much, everyone, for being part of the AEN and support the work that we do and partner with us in all what we do. Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to adjourn the webinar then. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Siwe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sisiwe, and bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Sisi.